So the Batman 2021, what do we know so far? I mean, sure, we know that it's got the placeholder title of The Batman, and that could change within the next couple of years. It's directed by Matt Reeves, and we've got Robert Pattinson as the Batman, and most recently, it's got the cinematographer Greg Fraser, who's most popularly known, at least to me, for his impressive visuals on Rogue One. It's slated for a, June 25th, 2021 release date, but what about everything else? About, Batman himself? What's the plot going to be like? How is his villains going to factor in? What stories could it be inspired by? And just every kind of little tidbit that we know so far. Well, this is the video for you. How's it going, guys? Welcome to a brand new Batman 2021 video, and I've been wanting to do this one for a little while just so we have all the information in one place. Maybe you've been searching for a video like that yourself. Just everything literally that we know so far about the Batman that's kind of worth knowing about. As I said in the intro, of course, sure, you may know little things like it's a 3-story arc, so it's obviously a trilogy that Matthew Reeves is planning to do, but as he said himself, you've got to start with one, and those other movies are for another video, I guess. But at the end of the day, I'm sure you kind of just want to know about what does he have planned for the Batman himself? Where are we at in Bruce's life? Are we really going to be seeing an origin story again? Are they going to fit that in there? Maybe you're asking yourselves, is this, I'm hearing different things, Boba. Is it in the DCU, or are they kind of really just trying to concentrate on maybe creating an amazing Batman film? Is it going to be connected, or is it going to kind of be its own thing? Where are we at with that? Well, let's go over those things now, and if you enjoyed this video, I just really appreciate it if you left a thumbs up on it, subscribe for more Batman updates just like this. And let's go. As I'm sure you all know, our Batman is Robert Pattinson. You may agree with that, you may not. You may have not initially agreed with that, but you're kind of leaning over to it now. You may or may not know he's 33 years old, which is one of the youngest Batmans to come to the screen, but that obviously fits this film and its narrative very, very well. So regardless of what specific age they decide to go with for when Bruce traveled around the world and returned to Gotham to try on the cape, he is a very newly formed vigilante. So what you need to know about Batman from the get-go is that Reeves has described Bruce Wayne, or Robert Pattinson's Batman, to be in his formative years. The story, which I'm sure a lot of you will be happy to know, is not another rehashing of his origin, but it isn't specifically a retelling of Batman Year One. But neither is it the tale of him being a seasoned crime fighter watching over Gotham City with everyone knowing and fearing who he is, which a lot of us, going into most things Batman, is already where usually Bruce Wayne is at in his career. But going back to his origin for a second, if they do explore that, as far as, to the extent I think they could go with that is, a scene, obviously we're going to get Alfred in the film. They might be in Wayne Manor. He might be looking at a mother. He might have collected his mother's pearls, and it might be on a mantelpiece or something like that. There might just be a scene like that. You can kind of imagine it on the screen, but they're not going to retell that crime alley scene for like the umpteenth time. Now, one of the reasons I have a lot of faith in this movie and a lot of buzz for it is that they're really going in on Bruce Wayne finding his footing on becoming that genius detective we know Batman to be, the world's greatest detective, which, is an integral part of the character. So honestly, heavy emphasis on the world's greatest detective, something a lot of the other live action iterations haven't primarily focused on. Sure, they have shown elements here and there. Of course they have, whether that's a part of the story arc with him even going after said villain in whatever film, but this is really going to be that kind of typical comic-based Bruce Wayne figuring some stuff out. So this film, with him being a much younger Bruce Wayne, will have Gotham also having a much more mistrusting view on the Caped Crusader, which, is only natural if you think about it. It's likely none of the villains will know who he really is. I mean, just kind of think of the movie showing those classical points of, where it's a newspaper saying, large bat in the sky, like, who is this person kind of thing, or a villain, being like, who keeps, drug busting. I don't want to compare it necessarily to Christian Bale going on that, dock scene in Batman Begins, but there probably will be a few things like that. It is kind of known that he is Batman already. He's already returned. It isn't literally Year One, as we've already mentioned, but with what goes along with that is that not really anyone knows. It's more of a legend of the Dark Knight. They don't know about the Batman. The feel of this movie really is going to be capitalizing on that kind of creepy ass, is this Bat real? Is this Batman a thing. But with all that being said, what will the tone of the film feel like? Like, how will the story be driven? Well, Matt Reeves has described that the Batman is going to be told based really purely off the shoulders of Bruce Wayne, like very point of view driven from Batman, which, you know, just goes very hand in hand with what we know about already with the aforementioned points. He also hopes it's going to be a story that will be thrilling, but also emotional. Now, given what we've just discussed about these being his formative years and how it isn't quite year one, with Reeves stating that we're definitely not doing year one, despite him loving that comic. So I am just, as a result of that, so hyped and so in love with the idea of seeing a younger Bruce Wayne struggle, who isn't even an experienced Batman, genuinely having a very hard time at being a badass. I mean, does that make sense? Of course he will be a badass. He would have just come back from his journey of training and what made him into the Batman. But at the same time, it's what Matt Reeves wants to show through this film is a transformation, this emotional struggle. Sure, he's a badass, but just because he's a badass Batman, he's still a noob. He still has to go through a lot of grind. But hearing Reeves talk about how he's hoping it will be, you know, thrilling yet emotional, could show Robert Pattinson's Batman genuinely struggle in solving this crime story with very dramatic and enticing performances given by Pattinson as he copes with the hardship and burden of being a newly formed vigilante against many villains. And yes, many villains, which you may have already heard about. So just in case you haven't, I mean, just as per this video, who are these villains and why are there going to be multiple villains, and how could this weave into the Batman story? The villains and the characters that we know we're getting in the movie so far are Firefly, Mad Hatter, the Riddler, supposedly Two-Face as well, but it's kind of unclear as to whether we'll see Harvey Dent make that transition, and I'll kind of get into that in a second with potential story influences. And the main antagonist is also rumored to be, amongst all of these villains, the Penguin. Now also Catwoman will be involved. Of course, I'm hyped about how they're going to show a very early Catwoman running across a younger Bruce Wayne. It's just super intriguing. And then stay tuned, of course, in this video about the towards the end part about how, if this is and will it be a younger Affleck. Earlier we mentioned about how the Batman, amongst him not really being a seasoned Batman, will tie in and focus heavily on his title of being the world's greatest detective. Well, Reeves has explained that there will be a rogues gallery, and he wants this film to be about where he goes on a journey of tracking down the criminals, trying to solve a crime as the main plot, obviously, with the genius detective comments earlier. But having this in this movie with the multiple villains and him going on this journey will allow, according to Reeves, to have an arc so that he may go through a transformation. So this is kind of just building on those blocks I kind of fanboyed about earlier. So while Matt Reeves has said that they're not really doing any one particular comic, all of what we have heard so far in regards to the villains, crime and detective plotline sounds heavily inspired from the Long Halloween comic. Now, of course, this isn't confirmed, guys. It just seems something or one of the stories that, you know, given the details we know, it could be lining up to follow through inspiration. I'm sure the film's plot will be original, and if anything, it will be loosely adapted, of course, through multiple elements of different comics. But if you guys are familiar with the Long Halloween and obviously the detective-based, you know, Batman that is in that storyline and the kind of, adventure he has to go on in that, and the villains, as I just said, it features in how Two-Face has certain flashbacks in that comic book. It just does feel like, as I just said, Matt Reeves has said they're not adapting any comic book in specific. It's more like it will probably draw a lot from that amongst year one as well, and amongst many, many others. But it all sounds like it's sporting up to be a really, really sweet Batman film with a director who has such a clear vision and something that suits up with what I'm sure you're really liking and hearing right now. Hopefully that is. And just to weigh in on my opinion there with multiple villains, I know some people would think, isn't that like way too oversaturated? Well, given like stories like The Long Halloween, just for example, it will make perfect sense. I'm not going to give all that storyline away. I recommend picking it up just so you have some kind of idea where they could be going. And just, I guess, to give you a vibe, because just from what I know about that story, it does feel like this would be really good for Robert Pattinson's Batman to have some of those loose adaptations of that storyline in this first movie, whilst also not directly stripping from the pages of the comic and, having a murdering killer like Holiday and etc, etc. They may twist details like that up. As all things are, adaptations, not copy and paste. Lastly, everyone, probably one of the most interesting points that I want to tackle in this video, and maybe something you've all wanted to get out of this, any of it, is this Batman, this Robert Pattinson Batman, this movie, a younger Ben Affleck? Is it a part of the DCU continuity? Well, this is an interesting one because it still isn't very visibly clear. So the Batman did start with Ben Affleck, as we all know, writing, directing, and starring, and along the way it seems to have shaped into something else entirely. Well, given that, you know, it's now based on a much younger Batman, and obviously that's not Affleck anymore, I think it's safe to say it is a whole different bag now. You may have heard things like Affleck's film would have surrounded something like an iteration of Batman as we knew from the DCEU, pinning him up against villains in Arkham, but that's neither here nor there at this point. But word on the Gotham Street now is that it's extremely unlikely. Obviously, we've had a recasting of, you know, Robert Pattinson, but people like Jeremy Irons coming back as Alfred is really unlikely to happen now. And ultimately, my take on the whole younger Affleck vibe here is that yes, it's so far in the past that they could do a younger Affleck, and you could accept the obvious on-screen changes because, well, you know, it's so far in the past, it's in his formative years into becoming the Dark Knight, that it would be expected to feel different to the Affleck Batman that we saw a decade or so later in the DCU films. But what I honestly pose then is, well, what's the point? You may as well let Matthew Reeves have complete creative freedom with his own rebooted trilogy, which it seems like they did let him have anyway, while still aspiring to keep it loosely connected to the DCEU. I think DC will have more success anyway letting this be its own thing, similar to what Todd Phillips has done with Joker, as you all know, coming out this October, but obviously at the same time not letting it go as far or as Elseworlds, you know, and in terms of how different that's what Elseworlds is as a movie Joker is going to be. This also falls in line with the new wave of successful DC films, even with existing characters such as Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and others not really focusing so much and even having elements of retconning from the highly critiqued beginning years of the DCU. Like Warner Brothers is kind of moving in a direction where they're not obsessing over that anymore. But bottom line with this question, guys, from my standpoint after a lot of digging, is that I believe that this was meant to, and even after Affleck left the role, intended to be a younger version of Affleck set in the 90s, and even though it wouldn't have concentrated or put major effort into connecting to the DCEU continuity, audiences were meant to more or less assume it was. But obviously, as I said before, allowing and accepting that Reeves would change a lot from cast to approach and tone. However, as things have unfolded over the course of time, there are many things to suggest that it could be its own thing now. But as of right now, I honestly can't confirm this. I mean, you could look at it more or less from the bottom of the pit, fact-wise, is that it is connected and intended to be low-key a 90s version of Affleck's Bruce Wayne. But with the way they go about it, with the many differences we will see for sure in this trilogy, it may as well not be connected, but still having technically that DCEU stamp. But this does take me back to comments Matthew Reeves made a while ago back in January, of which he stated that when asked about its connectivity to the DCEU, is that right now I'm involved with the Batman. Warner's believes that they don't have to try and develop a giant slate that has to have all the plans for how it's going to connect. However, I honestly still wouldn't take these comments from Matthew Reeves as an absolute certainty, or just in the terms of reading into that so much, as these comments on the connectivity were made around the time of when we only just found out that Affleck had dropped out of the role, and that was quite a while ago now, as you may know. And things for the Batman 2021 since Affleck left the role, and if you remember when that was all going everywhere on the internet, things have dramatically changed for the movie in both script and production. Reeves has gone through multiple different passes, and who knows where they could have, or what Warner Brothers could have let them do by now. But ultimately for this video, guys, because this is my last point on this, and I guess it wraps up the video in general, because that is the extent mainly of what we know about this movie, is I still think it is interesting, as much as I want this to not be connected to a DCU Affleck. You know, to explore younger Affleck and his rogues gallery, his connection to Selina Kyle, and honestly, at the same time, don't get me wrong, as strong as desire as I have as wanting this to be separate from the DCU continuity, I really do like Ben Affleck's Batman, but only time will tell on this one. But there are some people saying, you know, inside people, that this is still connected. They just might be letting it, just like, as I said, with other films, be its own thing and establishing a new vibe, and I guess audiences just might have to block that out in their head, comparing it to future sets and things that we know from Affleck's Batman. But then you could always argue, oh, he might have refurbished a cave, oh, he might have been acting differently compared to when he, you know what I mean. I just want him to have his own thing. You may as well at this point. But that is it, guys. Basically everything we know about the Batman 2021 so far as of when I'm filming this video right now. I know this was a very long video, but obviously amongst facts, I do want to mix in my own opinion. I am such a big Bat Family fan. I have so much passion and faith in this movie, and Matt Reeves as a director that I'm just so excited for it. I would love to hear what you guys think down in the comments below. I really do hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like on it. It really does show your support for the channel. If you want to talk about the Batman with me and share your ideas with me personally, other than just the comments, join my Discord server in the description down below. That is where the link is. You can tweet to me on Twitter and all kinds of other things. But that is just about everything. So thank you so much for watching, guys. Hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you, Bat Family, in the next video. Goodbye.